in Salem, Ohio, and we are with refugees of East Palestine, so to speak, and one still person, unfortunately, having to live there. This is my first time in the area. I'll be going to East Palestine tomorrow, but I am with Ashley, her boyfriend Matt, Krista, who's still living in her toxic home, unfortunately, in East Palestine. For those of you who have watched Status Coup since this disaster happened last year, you've seen Ashley and Matt several times as you've unfortunately had to deal with all this. We are now, 14 months since Norfolk Southern necessarily, essentially chemically nuked East Palestine. Should say the surrounding areas too, because Pennsylvania, particularly the western part, has suffered. A lot of people have either gotten sick or animals died, or Hampshire, even Canada. People telling me weird shit was falling out of the sky and they were getting weird symptoms. But came here because after a year in a hotel, which, contrary to what you might think, is not fun, staying in a hotel for a year, you finally were able to get out of there, but you're not back in your home. You're in basically a campgrounds in a camper/trailer, and sadly, this has been such a ordeal for you. This is your preferred option, being here. So let's start with remind people, if they're just coming to this brand new, and smash the like button, share this live stream. The media only covers stories like this on an anniversary, if you're lucky. Other than that, they sweep it under the rug. But you and many like you, your homes are unlivable, even though Norfolk Southern, the EPA says, oh, our testing is fine. So you're not able to go back to your home still after a year. Yeah.
And they don't test inside our homes, and that's been a big thing. We constantly say that. But from February 3rd, 2023, I didn't think this would happen. I lost my home then. I was in a hotel consistently for a year until about maybe 2.5 weeks ago. And now we've been here because I still have symptoms. I still get sick. I still have a pink eye, and they can't explain it. It's not chemical, or it's not bacterial pink eye. It has to be chemical pink eye, but they're not going to diagnose me with that.
And speaking of, sorry to blow your spot, but you're still living in your house in East Palestine. I don't know if viewers could see it. I could see it. Your eye is bloodshot.
It started yesterday. I don't know why.
Right.
I was trying to share out the stream, so don't think I was being
No, that's okay.
I'm trying to find a way to share.
So I've heard that from you and a lot of people. When people are able to leave, symptoms clear up. But when you're in East Palestine, they come flaring back.
Yeah, and they fluctuate, and I'm guessing it based on what they're digging into or what's being carried what way by the wind at the time. Not this past weekend, but the weekend before, my youngest came to visit and had a nosebleed and severe pressure in her right ear and her right temple, and that was the side of her nose. And so many people think that the nosebleeds are just nosebleeds, and I just think, no, if you didn't have them before, that's chemicals burning through the mucous membrane. And where does everything go back through your body faster? The mucous membrane.
Yeah,
illegal drugs or even a lot of medications.
Dozens or hundreds or perhaps more than that, people just happening to get nosebleeds all in the same time period is not, just kind of like, oh, you're going through something. Yeah. There's a source. I wanted to, if you don't know this, because we might have people coming to this brand new, I think it's we lived in a normal, healthy, sane had a normal, sane government or normal, sane media, this would be on the front pages. But it came out, it came out last year, honestly, but it came out weeks earlier that Norfolk Southern, the owner of the chemical cars, so Oxyvinyls, which owned the vinyl chloride that were on those cars, the NTSB chair testified to J.D. Vance, the senator from Ohio, that Norfolk Southern basically hid from the governor, the emergency, the fire chief, hid that they were being told there's no need to blow up these trains. Yep. So you having to be here and reminding you, here is a trailer. They're living on a campgrounds instead of their home. because when you go back to your home, it still smells.
Yep. And it's like you get a tunnel vision. We even talked to another resident that's right behind us. He's trying to sell his home right now. He's like, it's almost like you're not you. Like, you get a tunnel vision. It doesn't seem right. Like, you can't think clearly when you're there. And I feel it when I go there. I get a mild headache or pressure on my head. Not even a headache, just a pressure. And it feels like you are in a tunnel. Like, you can't remember things. Like, okay, I'm supposed to go and get this. You have no idea what you're trying to get. And you have to walk around, and you find yourself almost like in a dementia state. Like, what was I getting? What am I doing? And it's really odd. I've never felt anything like that.
Almost like feeling delirious?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like,
almost
you're under the influence. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Almost inebriated.
You know, it's interesting you said that. In a different scenario, I was in Kalamazoo, Michigan last year, next to a paper mill. And yeah, paper mills, a lot of them emit toxic stuff, but this one, I mean, literally was pumping poison into a poor black community. And just standing a block away from the paper mill, I was trying to, like, speak sensibly and tell a story, and I was delirious. Mm-hmm. And that was from hydrogen sulfate, whatever other gases they were releasing, and I was delirious. I lost my train of thought, splitting headache. My camera, not him, a different colleague was feeling the same way. So what you're describing is a gas, chemical compound, and yet it came out recently that emails that the EPA were on, they were talking amongst themselves early on. We're talking early, a month or two after this happened. Let's not get into that.
Yeah, let's not declare a health emergency.
What do you think about that? That
sounds
early
familiar.
on, the EPA was saying...
It sounds exact.
Like, we shouldn't get into that, whether we should declare a health
It's
emergency.
disgraceful. Mm-hmm. I mean, they know the symptoms. They see the people, whether it's face-to-face or the phone calls. It's not like only a couple of people have brought it to their attention. Many people have called them, many more than speak out publicly on social media. They've gone to the meetings, they've spoken there, and they just keep blowing it off. It's disgraceful.
And Ashley...
who's overwhelmed. And how sad is that?
Yeah.
That in your 30s, after a lifetime of this being okay, normal, that you get to go grocery shopping, that suddenly that's overwhelming because you haven't been able to do it for a year.
Right. And in the hotel, I mean... What did you do?
I mean, we had a mini fridge, and Norfolk would pay for food, and you only have so many options. Microwave meals are not going to cut it, and then you have, a 7-year-old, they're not going to eat everything that you get. So it's trying to make everyone happy.
Brook Southern settled with a giant group of residents, class action. So similar to Flint, there was a big class action lawsuit where a big pool of individual lawsuits were thrown together as one big lawsuit. $100 million sounds very large, but there's several problems with it. Number one, in any of those scenarios, including Flint, take a third out right away, goes to lawyers. And I know people might complain about that, but in the case of Flint, I mean, a lot of these lawyers have lost money staying on that case for years and years and years, and not taking other clients to help the people of Flint. But, so you take a third off, so let's say $450 million. Well, it's not known how many residents are part of that.
Yeah.
It covers a 20-mile radius for property damage and 10 miles for health. Everybody's covered, whether you signed up for a lawsuit or not. So they're not going to know until everybody's opted in or out, and they're pushing you to do that. Originally they said, hey, all the attorneys, because I went to hear many of them, we're going to do this class, that's going to be the liability, but everything else we're going to break it down into individual suits. Now the tune has changed, and individual suits will be really expensive, and the burden of proof is going to be on you, and there's supposed to be a fairness hearing, I've read, is connected with class action settlements, so before the judge signs off on it, there's supposed to be a fairness hearing. We're hoping we'll find out about that, and maybe we can all show up for that.
Mm-hmm. In a 20-mile radius, if you think about it, that amount, and then do the math with if 60,000 people are part of that. So maybe you have a family. We don't know if we do a settlement, is it going to be my entire family? Or is it going to be individual with me, my son, that, like all of those smaller ones. So if someone has 7 people living in their house, is that going to be split up individually with all of those people? So we don't really know a number. So the more you keep doing that math, the further and further it drops. It's not even worth it, honestly.
And I think there's another element. I hate to bring this up, but in the next 2 to 5 years, unfortunately, there's likely to be a lot of sick people.
There are.
In East Palestine, and I didn't hear anything in that settlement about free health care.
There's no medical monitoring. They said that the science didn't show that, but you do not have to settle your health if you take a property claim. And they said that's the first time for a class action where you can settle your property damage and leave your health open. So you can sue later for your health. Not that that's ideal. I mean, we need knowledgeable doctors involved in this now. Yeah. We don't have that.
But I want to make something clear, because I've seen this in Flint, I've seen this in East Chicago, Indiana, I've seen this in a lot of places. When they say there's no evidence for that, health, meaning the EPA did acknowledge their equipment that they were testing with was not even capable.
Me and him were like on it, and we were not
in the room, like, does anybody else fucking hear this?
Yeah.
I was like,
so the EPA's equipment was not even detecting like lower levels of contamination that can still cause health problems.
Yeah.
They were only using equipment that you would use in like an industrial warehouse where it would be high level contamination.
Wait, they said that was C-Tech. So C-Tech was using the handheld that didn't read low enough to detect these chemicals, and the EPA had one little monitor for what was that? I want to say acid or some kind of acid.
Acrolein? No, that was the one that...
It's one chemical. Out of all the chemicals that were... No, it wasn't that. If I think of it, I'll drop it in the comments later, or I'll think of it and say it. But they're not even testing for a whole... Even with those things you can test for, it wasn't even telling us what chemicals are there.
And I hate to keep bringing up Flint, but the reason I do is because I kept saying the reason I stay on Flint, which, by the way, in 2 days from now is the 10-year... anniversary of the ongoing water crisis. I'll get later. The reason I keep bringing it up, I stay on Flint because if the people who poison Flint get away with it, the same playbook is going to be used in other places, and it is. Mm-hmm. It is pretty much the same thing where several independent testers in Flint and in East Palestine, voila, they having to, in many cases, fork over their own money, are finding higher levels of contamination. There was independent testing. I know Scott Smith, some others found very high levels of dioxin, which they didn't even test for. The EPA had to be forced into testing for dioxins. Don't
protect your home. If anything ever happens disaster-wise, and we know from all this history repeating ourselves, and going back to Flint, going back to Love Canal, all these different places, they do not protect where you live. No matter how much you want to think it, no matter how many taxes you pay, they do not pay for your home to be protected. They will not test your home to be protected. I should have never found 100 times higher in ethanol in my home. No one else's home was tested for that. They're not testing our air for that. So there's a big problem in discrepancies. So if I had a better test and could afford a bigger test, could you imagine what else I would have found?
Right.
And people are living in this.
Could I ask you, because you're still, unfortunately, having to live in your home, I see your eye, have you been having other symptoms periodically?
I do. I had chronic migraines before this. They're usually worse in the spring and the fall. I now have a migraine every single day, complete with the aura and the disturbed thinking, like just feeling not being able to piece things together quite right. My youngest and I both have had that. We had a young adult spit out a whole molar. A whole root and all. It wasn't bloody, nothing. A rash that traveled up my 2-year-old grandson's vein and up over his heart on the front and the back. The muscle cramping, the stomach. I don't even like to say upset because it's just so different than anything else. A lot of acid reflux type of problems. Mood problems.
And a lot of this you never had before.
Either not had before or had it a very different level. Mm-hmm.
And I want to bring up the rashes because I've spoken with a lot of residents and we've done stories showing people's rashes, and they're saying the water has been tested in the city, it's fine.
Yeah, and a rash that travels up a child's vein over their heart is terrifying. My daughter took him to Children's Hospital in Boardman, and they laughed at her. They had an entire billboard that said, East Palestine, we are here for you. And she took him in, and she's like, his behavior's been a bit off, and I noticed this rash, and before it gets any worse, I just, we live in East Palestine, just want to get it checked out. They laughed at her. And we do not run to ER for everything, like, at all. That was the only time he's ever been there. Mm-hmm. It just so insulting.
And I think that's an important thing that people need to realize. I've seen this matters and don't know how to empathize, or they're just not equipped to deal with this. Regular internists or regular pediatricians, they're not equipped to deal with volatile compounds. They're not equipped to deal with toxic gases like vinyl chloride. You need specialists.
And before you end up in the situation, you're
sharing, but people need to realize you guys aren't living in East Palestine, but when you go back, your symptoms flare up.
Yeah. Well, she used to do resale, and
just even getting rid of the stuff, too.
She's a crazy couponing lady and stuff like that. So I would go back to town. I would sell, like, her product and stuff like that, like, after work and stuff. Because I work 12-hour shifts, well, I would, guys together, and, like, you guys want shampoos and conditioners, stuff like that. Like, I would go to the guys that have a lot of kids, stuff like that, where they can save money. And I was like, well, she's selling everything for $1. I was like, if you want to buy it, I was like, come on down, but that's at your own disclosure.
Yeah.
I was like, it's $1 a piece. And I went, sold the stuff, and I did it 3 days in a row after 7A to 7P. Or 7P to 7A. It was either one. I worked 7 to 7s. Well, then I started having issues. I showed Ashley my hands, like, just from handling the stuff. My skin started peeling.
Wow.
And he's like a baby. He has the softest skin. He has softer skin than me.
These babies. I mean, they're nice.
That's happened at my house, too.
Well, I would come back to the hotel room, my hands would be peeling. Well, then I started vomiting and passing blood. And
he was having bowel movements.
And I'm like, this
blood.
Is
your poop.
Yeah.
Was passing blood.
Common denominator. What's a common denominator? As soon as I stopped going into town for those 3 days, it all stopped.
So you're pooping blood. I've talked to residents. A lot of people had nosebleeds.
And I have pictures of all of it.
Yeah.
I have pictures. I mean,
you don't need to.
I told him you need pictures.
I got a lot of poop issues. Not that, but I got poop issues. So yeah.
Well, she told me take pictures of everything, and I did.
Right.
And I got fired from my job because there were hotel changes because some of the hotels that we stayed at, like one night and then we had to change different hotels. Then we had to go back to another hotel, and I had to call off for that because I was on 12-hour shifts. We had 2 kids and 2 dogs, and it's all of us.
Yeah. And all their belongings.
I mean, you can't...
Everything we accumulated, we had to get everything new clothes, new... So what we had to purchase again just to take it back and forth because we couldn't take anything
And
from our
Norfolk
house.
Southern was not helping you with moving stuff.
Not really. It was pulling teeth. Even to get hoodies, my son needed clothes. They were like, no, you should have been able to go back by now.
Okay.
Thank you, bud.
It's just amazing because, honestly, this is so in your face, a cover-up.
Yeah. Well,
I mean,
that's not the end of it, though.
Okay.
So we had went back in to the house again, and I was trying to get rid of stuff because my only option is to sell the house, and I'm going to have to disclose everything I have, share it with everyone. And my mom went in, she's like, I was getting headaches. I was having issues. My throat was hurting, and we're moving stuff. So
can I ask you, like, how long does it take for you to be in your house in East Palestine to start feeling
about
symptoms?
30 minutes.
30
so
minutes.
It's a little bit longer, 30 to 45 minutes. But then you also have that foggy kind of thought, so it feels like it's longer, and it's not. So it's about 30 to 45 minutes.
But the EPA tells you they're not detecting any chemicals.
They won't test it. They will not test inside my house. They watched me experience symptoms where half my body went numb. Would not test my house.
What is their reason? What is the reason they give you?
There's no need for it. We already did testing. Basically, I had my opportunity, and that's it.
So, to be clear, they did testing with equipment that they say is not equipped to detect lower levels. They also use contractors that have been known as basically the cleanup crew in a bad way, meaning they've used contractors that are known to be basically yes men for corporations. One of them, for example, was used after the BP Gulf explosion to basically say everything's fine here.
Yep.
They said that their machines were set for parts per million.
Right.
They should have been testing in parts per trillion, which they admitted it wasn't happening with that video with Lewis.
And there's other things that they admitted. Mark Durno, who is the on-scene coordinator, I just think he's the EPA's basically, cleanup guy. Go ask the people of Flint what they think of Mark Durno, if you're watching, Mark. And he didn't realize somebody was recording him, and he said this was not a controlled burn.
Yeah.
This was an open burn. In English, open burn just means a detonation.
Yeah,
it was an uncontrolled. It was a detonation of over 1 million pounds, I believe it was, of vinyl chloride. Vinyl chloride to brain cancer, leukemia, lung cancers, other forms of cancer. Then you have the byproducts, which I'm not skilled enough to talk about, but the byproducts of all these different chemicals that were detonated together. You also have, again, I'm not a weatherman, but weather changes. People have their symptoms vary with the weather, because with the weather, the chemicals that are either in the soil, the air, buildings, etc., are can intensify.
Yeah, and that's what Melissa May told me in the very beginning. She's like, watch whenever it starts to get warmer. You're going to notice everyone's going to start getting sick. Did it. Exactly. And whenever it rains, people are going to have issues. Did it. So we already knew, and it's still happening again. So now it's getting warmer, so now people are having issues like the eye. They're going to have bloody noses, all that again. But if anyone does want to see some stuff that Mark Durno has said, never smelling anything in town, I do have videos on my YouTube. Okay. So I have him in another person's house saying that he hasn't smelled anything ever. And then later on in the video, he says, well, I did smell something at the municipal building. Why didn't we take Biden to the municipal building? Why do you go to the candle shop? Anyone that comes in that represents anything for the government goes to the candle shop. So,
why are they going to a candle shop?
Because you can't smell it there.
I see.
And then the municipal building, this is rumor, I don't know for sure, but they said they're going to rebuild the municipal building in a different location. So we're property.
Yeah. On the far edge of town, far north of town.
I want to talk about Biden's visit. I don't want to make this completely about politics, because it's not about politics, it's about humans. But to me, forgetting the fact that he didn't come here for a year, which was ridiculous, I personally, pure speculation, I think probably the White House.
Steps anyway.
Well, they wouldn't have noticed anyways. I mean, the way the chemicals hit, you'd be like, you have Alzheimer's anyways. So,
right.
I mean,
but I'm presuming the doctors said don't risk sending him there because they know the truth. They're just letting the residents slowly be poisoned.
Yeah.
But when he came here, it seemed extremely controlled to me. He was talking. It just seemed like he was in and out in a very controlled setting. And he said, we're continuing to hold Norfolk Southern accountable. And I'm wondering what that means, because aside from paying for you to stay in a hotel for a year, which they paid for some residents to stay in a hotel,
not others.
They're not paying for permit.
They take your settlement and say, we're going to hold it over your head. You use this program. You can't sue for damage.
Just explain, what's the VIP program?
So if your house is valued at $100,000 and it sells for $50,000, Norfolk will make up that gap. So no matter what you're promised, the value. So if you use that, then they will keep you relocated.
But
they will keep paying for it.
Here's an obvious question. No disrespect. Do you all have lines around the block of people wanting to buy your homes in East Palestine after this?
That's the problem. Why would I want someone to move there? And I'm going to have to show them all of my results, because I don't want someone that's going out, has a brand new baby, just getting out in the world, to go into what I'm trying to leave, right, so I can hear that their kid had cancer.
Right.
That is ridiculous. And for them to push me into that situation, that's like mental combat right there. Like, they are really destroying people, their thoughts, how I should be doing things. It's not right.
And if you were to participate in that program, would that preempt you from suing them?
Yeah.
So basically, I'll pay the difference, but you can't sue us.
Yeah.
Shocking.
Yeah.
There was in the beginning a lot of people buying homes, the homes closest to the derailment site, but we talked to a few of them who got sick, and just the time it took to come in and do some little touch-ups to get ready to move in. I don't know that everybody who moved here had issues, but I know we've talked to a few. How do you sell your home? My home, we've lived there 28 years. It's the only home my children or my grandson has ever known.
Right. I know Lewis had issues when he was coming into town. Lewis talked about his issues. Mm-hmm. His respiratory issues and stuff like that.
Hell, Erin Brockovich got sick.
Yeah.
And Erin Brockovich, not the name drop, I've spoken with her. She's been to a lot of contaminated places.
Yeah.
She's been to a lot of contaminated places. And this one, she said, I'm not going back there.
Yeah, I know.
Not because she doesn't care, but you have to protect your health, too. And it screwed up her eye, and
And she kept saying Chrome 6 is there. I feel like Chrome 6 is there. Then we look through the soil samples that Norfolk did in the beginning. There's Chrome 6. And that was in the movie, if anyone saw it on TV. She actually went over that. We're living in that chemical and all the chemicals in this historical, anything disaster-wise. We're living in all of those chemicals combined into one. And then they just put it in a volcano, shot it up in the air, let it fly down everywhere. And that's what's here.
I wonder what you think about this, because I've been thinking about this with flint thrown around right now. Whatever people's political beliefs are, obviously a lot of people are dying in Gaza. I think it's a genocide, but when people think about genocide, they really think about something like happening all at once, and it's very fast, and you're seeing the bodies. But there's another form of genocide that is a slow-moving, systematic death, and it's slow and it's painful, and not only we know several people Lewis spoke with already have cancer.
Yep.
I can't definitively say it's from this, but it's very rare for men to get breast cancer.
Yeah.
And
double breast cancer.
And that gentleman, I forget his name.
Wayne O'Connell.
Yeah, Wayne O'Connell. He lives in western Pennsylvania, but right near the train derailment, just a few miles. He got double breast cancer 4 months after this happened. The plume went straight over there. You have another woman Lewis spoke with, got breast cancer, no history in her family. You have all these people with the nosebleeds, eye problems, throat. I've talked to mothers who say their kids were peeing blood. I hope that we're not going to see this become one of the worst cancer clusters.
Tumors are coming up with kids now, too. And more issues like what celiac disease is going around. We've heard a handful of people. So that's mainly caused by chemical contamination. So like with what you said, the genocide, it's very possible. And people are becoming more aware of what they're eating, what's going on with their food. And I don't think people realize some of their food comes from East Palestine. We have Tyson and Purdue.
A lot of elections. Yeah. But democracy, and all I'm thinking is like, what democracy? We just have one endless poisoned states of America. You're either poisoned by the water, the railroads, the mines, the fracking, and the plastic warehouses. Mm-hmm. I mean, Indiana, BP had an explosion a few weeks ago, and it's in the news. If you're lucky, you'll be in the news for a week. Everyone comes here, and then it's all swept under the rug. It just seems to me why I tell people, like, with YouTube and other places, the algorithm is basically rigged, so it's very hard to get it out.
Definitely
But
is.
why I tell people, hey, when you see a live stream and we're live from somewhere, don't think that it doesn't affect you if you're not from East Palestine, because this could be coming to a town near you. It might not be a railroad in your circumstance. It might be something else. But, I mean, we were just in West Virginia a few weeks ago, and I've never seen anything like it. I mean, the water's got, like, green fungus coming out of it, white particles.
And I was talking to him from the beginning, and this has been going on all that time until he started to get some traction. And like, it is there in your towns. We just see it here because it happened. They exploded it. There's stuff going on everywhere. I mean, it is dangerous what they're putting in. There's no need for these man-made chemicals. Like, none at all. Do we really need apples to last 3 months?
Right.
We don't. Lower the price. Don't use the chemicals. And just give us natural food. Make sure that our produce is safe. No pesticides. The cows are eating and drinking clean. Yeah. Like, there's absolutely no reason for half of this stuff.
What I'd like to ask, because I shouldn't be shocked at all, because this is America, but I really thought when that NTSB chair, if you don't know, I think it was maybe 2 months ago, there was a Senate hearing, the National Transportation Safety Board. So the chair was speaking, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, who I think pretends to care, but that's a different story, right before, because I think a lot of people, the way this was written, think the actual derailment is what got everyone sick. It's not the actual train derailing that got everyone sick. It's blowing up the trains that got everyone sick. The derailment, yes, there was some leakage, but it wasn't detonated. So the NTSB chair said Norfolk Southern was repeatedly warned by the company, said basically just let it cool down. It might take a few days. And not only that, but Norfolk Southern basically blocked the chemical car company from being in the emergency meetings, and Norfolk Southern hid from the governor in their conversations that they were being told that there's no need.
Back and forth, if they were left out of the room, if they were in the room, who made the decision, because we talked to Trent at the beginning and he was kind of flip-flopping.
Vance, the Ohio senator, said, if this is true, it sounds like, I'm paraphrasing, but he basically said, it sounds like this town was intentionally poisoned to open up the rail quicker for profit. I've emailed JD Vance, I've emailed Senator Sherrod Brown's office several times. I interviewed Governor DeWine, because I don't know if I'm the governor and the NTSB chair is saying the company lied to you, they didn't give you all the information because he had to approve it, so did the fire chief. I think I might say something. I wonder if the nearly $200 million he has gotten from Norfolk Southern over his political career keeps him quiet. Because this affects Pennsylvania. Fetterman, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt because his whole communications are, but they would not answer me a simple question: do you call for a criminal investigation? I didn't even ask for criminal charges. I just said, do you call for a criminal investigation? Seems like a pretty simple yes.
Yeah.
To be up for the election. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but I don't know. Obviously, you are the residents, so I don't, it might be not criminal accountability, it might be getting to safety and health, but if it were me, I'd want heads to roll. I'd want people in jail, and the fact that you can't even get the governor who was lied to say a word about it, it seems, what do I say to you?
I mean, I'm not political, but this person handles this and this and this and this and this, and they're not all together, and they're not coming together in sync. They're not meeting together and saying this is what's going on. And then there's something that you didn't mention right before they did that controlled explosion. Well, if you look at our maps, there is a swamp and then water that goes directly underneath the tracks. Anyone can look it up, East Palestine, and look up where that track is by Taggart. They dug a pit, put all the chemical in it, and then put dirt right over it.
Yeah.
So then that put all of that
soil.
Yep.
And were only made to dig it up because residents complained.
Yep.
The EPA wasn't going to force them to do that.
And then it stacks and it stacks and it stacks, and no one knows what to do, and no one has any qualifications in chemicals or understanding trains or anything like that. They just know how to take money. They know how to appease certain people. They know whenever it's time to be reelected. I mean, Sherrod Brown does contact me about the tax. I would be nonstop trying to figure out how I'm going
to... For some reason, they seem to be in charge of the emergency response.
Yep.
No disrespect to the fire chief. From what I was told, including by first responders who didn't want to go on the record, but they told me off the record, Norfolk Southern was calling the shots.
Yep.
Why a multi-billion-dollar corporation that detonated chemicals over this town was anywhere near the response site, I have no idea. But do you plan on investigating the fact that the chemical car company says they didn't need to do it, and the NTSB chair, he didn't respond?
Because they're under CERCLA. So CERCLA puts the person that caused all the damage in charge in the EPA to mildly monitor what's going on and just kind of keep tabs. So think of it as a poorly run mall job. If you go into any mall job, it's probably run better than how they're doing it. But that's kind of like the structure of it. So the sneaky boss that's stealing things or trying to hide it or blaming it on other workers, that's what's going on. And they're covering it really good like that.
And what do you think about, essentially, to me, and again, I say Flint, the playbook, Obama showed up to Flint, he drank water, which from what Michael Moore and others told me, was not actually Flint water. I believe it was water from Air Force One. Anyway, and then they leave. There's news headlines that quote the president, in this case it was Biden, saying we're going to continue to hold Norfolk Southern accountable, we're going to continue to give relief to East Palestine. Then you don't hear anything for several months, maybe a settlement, maybe some law is passed. In this case, maybe they'll pass a law to allow you not to pay taxes on the reimbursement, and that's basically it. I mean...
The playbook is so glaringly identical. If you go back to Times Beach and Love Canal, if you go watch the 3 Mile Island documentary, if you go to Flint, if you go back and watch Aaron Brockovich and look at him, it's the same thing.
And I just want to tell viewers, Times Beach, what she was talking about, I believe that was in the 1970s or 80s.
It was 1982.
1982.
It started in the 70s, and the EPA knew about it in the 70s, but they chose not to tell the residents because they thought it would be harmful. They thought poisoning them would be a better idea.
And that was Times Beach, Missouri, or Missouri. I don't. People pronounce it a different way. And essentially, it was catastrophic levels of dioxins, which independent testers found high levels of dioxin, and cleared out the town.
Yes, they did.
It's a ghost town.
And we have contact with their last mayor, who fought to get the town shut down to save her residents. She is absolutely appalled at what's going on here. She's just a mess about it, because how did they not learn? Because when it happened to them, Lois Gibbs came to them and encouraged them and told them, hey, and now this is what happened. You can fight this. You can get out of here. And then they did it. And then to see this happening, when I found her, when I made contact with her, she was already worried about our community because she had seen it on TV. The people we've met, from you meeting Aaron and Melissa, all the people that have come together to help us know what we're up against has been huge. But back to Biden, I mean, he didn't do nothing. I would say that regardless of who the president is, as far as I understand, those grants were already promised in the fall. Yeah. I sat in on a 2-day Zoom meeting about them. He didn't do anything. I don't want to hear Michael Regan ever say laser again, or the word ubiquitous. I'm tired of those 2 words. Nothing's been laser focused. My community is sick and dying. I've looked Mark Durno in the eye and told him, you know it. You know from history. And I have gone back through the list of the historical sites. I said, you know it.
And they
don't do it.
What do they? I'm just curious. I mean, what do they tell you?
He did tell me. He said in other situations he saw a problem he knew how to address from an engineering standpoint, and in this situation he did not see that. He does not know how to address this from an engineering standpoint.
Here's how you address it. It's very simple.
You move the people.
Yes.
First and foremost, you remove the people from the threat.
And I'm not trying to get into politics. You could agree with sending money to Ukraine and Israel. I don't, but that's a different story. But I mean, it's like $95 billion out the door today for this country or that country, but
nothing. We had a Senate hearing where Ashley spoke It was the PA Senate. Doug Mastriano, I believe he is their emergency readiness. I can't think of the exact title. He held a Senate hearing in Darlington, and Ashley and a few other residents spoke, and they did a great job. And when we were speaking with him afterwards, their representatives, Darlington Township's representatives, all left immediately. They did not stay to shake hands, greet anybody. They scooted. Doug Mastriano stayed, and he talked to anybody. He was not protected, like he wasn't like stay back. He was taking pictures with people. But he said, when I was in the service, if I ran over your chicken, the government had to repay 5 times the value of that chicken, 5 times the value of the projected eggs, 5 times the value of the projected chicks. They owe you guys 5 times what they have taken from you. Just to start with, not even counting our health.
Right. And
to have one senator be able to say that and into a void, it seems like. Into a void. I give our senators credit for working together on a lot of things. I know this is an impossible situation, and you have one new guy on the block. Vance is a pretty young, I forget what they call them, but pretty new to the system, and then Sherrod Brown's very, close to retirement. So I'm glad that they've worked together where they have, but we need more. We need the option of meaningful relocation. We need people to be made aware of the actual dangers, because there's still part of the population that they think we're nuts. For all the research that we've done, all the experts that we've spoke to, all the questions that we've asked, all the testing we've looked back over, they think we're nuts. And they're the ones at the most risk, because they're not going to be going for early detection.
Well, you're not inventing your bloodshot eye. I'm looking at it.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I
okay.
I see your eye. It's bloodshot. This is the first.
Can you feel my pounding head?
Right. This is the first time I'm here, but residents have sent me their rashes, and that's a common denominator in all the places I've been. I'm just somebody who trusts people rather than politicians. I trust people rather than experts, because most experts check their funding. And there's no reason for people to make up their symptoms. And generally, like you put the disclaimer, yes, I had migraines before, but they've intensified and they're more consistent. So, maybe those residents are lucky enough that they're not, for whatever reason, having symptoms. But we're not talking about 5 people here. We're talking about hundreds, if not thousands of people. And I think something that gets lost, what about all the people that have never been interviewed? What about all the people in Western Pennsylvania
and we hear a lot of those people that can't talk, that are afraid to talk, that are afraid to be ridiculed, lose their jobs, all that. So we have handfuls of people that are just saying little things here and there, and they are afraid, but they can't come forward.
Confide to us in depth, but they can't come forward.
And I believe Lewis spoke with workers that work pretty much right next to where the derailment happened.
That's a Ram fob?
I believe so. And they were afraid to speak, but they're sick working. Yeah. But you gotta go.
And they all have tremors, just like what I experienced, too. And like I said, with the petroleum products, there's the chemical and there's the symptom. So, it has to be connected. And these people are working in it, living in it, breathing it.
And for those of you...
every day.
For those of you old enough to remember, in the case of Love Canal, the government, the media, they were calling those mothers crazy ladies.
Yeah. They said it was a uniquely genetically defective community. They tried to tell them that they were just randomly a bunch of people that decided to live together that all happened to be genetically mutated. What?
Right.
In what world does that make sense?
And I'd also like to dip into what some say is conspiracy town, but I know it's not a conspiracy because I've seen it elsewhere. In the beginning of this, if you would post on Facebook and elsewhere, you'd be getting a lot of shares, a lot of attention. Videos would... I know when but when Lewis was first here, or I would do videos on East Palestine, we'd get 1,000, 2,000, even a month or two after.
Yeah.
Then a year later, we're getting 1,000 views. I was like, is it because Palestine is in the title and YouTube and Google don't like Palestine right now? But can you just share? Because I've heard from East Palestine residents that they feel they're being kind of throttled on social media.
So, even with Reddit, so we used to stream on our pan before they shut it down. It was very short-lived. It was during COVID. Me and him got into it. We'd have tons of viewers. Like, we had 64,000 watch us change a toilet bowl ring. Wow. So, I mean, we had a lot of people that interacted with us. And whenever I would post something on Reddit now after this happened and some stuff stirred up, and even reading the FOIAs that they were pinpointing people's posts off of Reddit, I did mention it to Mark Durno, and I said, don't play me like I'm dumb. I know you guys are shadow banning me. I'm not getting views, and you can see the algorithms that your post is hitting on this because they started doing it before everyone else. So you're seeing, no one's looking at it. You're just completely in the dark. You post it, it's gone. And we're seeing TikTok. It's not as suppressed, but it is. YouTube is the absolute worst, along with Facebook.
Right now we have 180,000 subscribers. Right now, 80 people are watching.
Yeah. It was kind of overwhelming, but it's suppressed.
Yeah, I mean, in general, with any story, I expect a drop-off after, like, the initial boom. In this case, boom. Yeah. But there's a difference between, like, a drop-off of, you're going to get, like, if you're getting 1,000 live viewers, maybe we'll go down to, like, 400.
Yeah.
But, you don't see that kind of drop unless people just are not seeing it.
And you can see it on Google. If you search it, you can look up who's looking up what keywords. People were looking up my name nonstop after I was on a couple news networks on TV, but then they couldn't find me because they would only find me if they put Ashley McCollum, East Palestine. You can't find me any other way. So you have to add East actually going on.
Mm-hmm. And can you kind of talk about it? Because it seems to me, I've seen it in other places. I mean, there's a couple articles for the Flint decade anniversary, but I was literally pitching to media outlets like, you'll find out in my book, but it's coming out this summer, but I have pretty juicy, exclusive stuff. I was pitching it to outlets, not interested. Local outlets, maybe they'll come for the 1-year anniversary, or maybe they'll do some human interest stories that, to me, are severely watered down, but do you find the media on a day-to-day basis reaching out to you, wanting to continue covering this?
No, I would send them stuff throughout the time, too. Like, hey, here's this meeting if you guys want to cover it. Or here's what's going on. This is a big thing. Everyone's talking about it. No response. Then all of a sudden the 1 year rolls around. Oh, hey, I just realized you messaged me. That was 3 months ago. What do you mean you're just realizing that? Because you don't have anyone else that's going to interview with you. Like, I'm so wore out from you guys not covering it, all of us getting sick, all of us trying to navigate through life and deal with what we're being dealt. Like, I'm kind of sick by how the media handles it, and it's not just. Like, you guys handle it perfect. We even had a person saying here say, well, how does he do it? You say anything you want. He'll let you say it. Like, that's news to me. But recording, like, one snippet and playing it and then them talking the rest of the time, that's not news to me. You don't know what's going on.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and he even mentioned that whenever he did interviews with different news crews, they they interviewed him for like a half hour, cut it down to like 20 seconds.
We've all went through that.
That's how his interviews went.
It's not just about that, like, that local news, but it's what they're cutting out.
That's it. Lori O'Connell, Wayne's wife, the day I met her, it was at a Darlington Township meeting, and
Lori's the wife of the gentleman who's got the double breast cancer.
She had a very well laid out speech of what her and her family had encountered in that time. She went in, she read it off, boop, 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 boop. The news cut her to about 30 seconds. I totally get that. They don't have time for her 4-minute thing, but they cut out all of the important stuff. And you guys, I believe you guys are the first ones that actually interviewed them and put out that he had male breast cancer. And that
you want to know my strong guess based on my dealings? I guarantee you that
unknown caller.
This guy, sorry. I guarantee you that news station's lawyer said, "Don't put that in. Mm-hmm. We don't want to give off we don't want to give off the impression that it's the railroads for fear of being sued."
And that's a shame. The news should be the news. You know, I'm sure that when I look back at it, the late 70s and 80s, I'm sure there was still some manipulation of the news, but it seemed so much more just factual information. I'm sure it was still manipulated to some degree, but to what we've experienced, we've all given...
Literally live a mile or two away from this detonation of mass chemicals. And the man, pretty rare to get breast cancer for men, gets breast cancer just a few months later. How do you leave that out?
Yeah.
You could have said, you say tomato, I say tomato. That's intentionally leaving, like...
the most important detail out.
And it's also leading your audience into what you want them to believe. And that's terrible. Yep. And it's not always the journalists. I've had journalists talk to me. They feel for me. They tell me, I'm trying, I can't do it, I'm running it. They're not portraying.
You shared with me, that I won't mention the network if you don't want to, but a big network, producers told you, like, I pitched to come back, but they won't send me back.
Yep. And then they changed their number after that. Because she felt so much, because her daughter had the same name as mine. And she... for me. We had a long conversation. She's like, I cannot imagine what you're going through. And she's connecting stuff, and she's like, I'll try and ask. Well, never got back to me. Changed your number. Because these people can't do anything for us, because they're in control of the big networks. And if they say the wrong things, they lose their money that they're getting from the stocks. Their advertising. They're all in with it. I mean, if you watch all this stuff, they're all in with it.
Well, and also, let's not forget, it's hard to report on climate change, for example, if you have big advertisers like Exxon and so on, whatever fossil fuel company.
Yeah.
Some, like in the case of Flint, there was a hospital that had the Legionnaires outbreak that they were advertising on a lot of the local news stations. From what I was told, the news outlets didn't want to lose those advertisers.
Yep.
I mean, we could go down the list of when you have corporations that own the news, and a lot of their revenue comes from corporate ads.
Yep.
Norfolk Southern I mean, literally, I think it was Politico, one of the newsletters presented by Norfolk Southern. I mean,
and their new energy company that they have, which is supplying East Palestine's energy now.
This is a dumb question, but I'm just going to ask. I mean, obviously the physical problems are paramount, but the mental health issues from this. I mean, you don't even have to have without this, people get depressed, people have anxiety, life is hard. But with this, I mean, with 2 kids, 2 dogs, moving hotels, or just living in a hotel, that's got to do. Can you kind of talk about the mental health aspect a little bit?
I think the best way to get people to understand, like before going into this, just think about how comfortable you are right now, wherever you're sitting at, watching this, talking to your friends, how you are. What if that's all taken away? Your insurance won't cover it. No one believes you. You lose your job. You're having medical problems. You start from nothing, and you might get a little bit of help.
Well, I don't know. I need to kind of reiterate on that.
Well,
I really don't think it's that easy unless you're put into this situation.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So if someone came and took everything away from you, and it's hard to come out of. I mean, this is the worst situation I have ever been put in my life. But no one really understands until you seriously think, what if everything's taken away? Me and my family have to work it out. There's going to be problems.
But just to keep people safe, this is what we're doing.
Living in a camper.
To keep themselves safe, to keep her son safe.
Yeah. And he never finished telling you about the second trip into town. So the first time he was passing blood, and what just happened yesterday.
What do you mean?
After you went into town, we were trying to clean out stuff. And
people have...
there was something else that was going on.
Sure, it's related. And there's nothing they can really do about it.
Yeah,
it's not...
that we're all going through. So it's kind of like, do I take care of myself? Or do I go more into debt because I have to take care of myself? Or is it going to help my lawsuit? At this point, it doesn't even...
How often do you expect to need an in-house toxicologist in a town of 5,000 people? Or in a region of, say, 10,000? Because, it wasn't just East Palestine city limits. But that's a lot of traveling for people who are struggling financially, emotionally. A lot of us don't have the greatest cars to begin with. The nearest toxicologist that we can see in person is in Pittsburgh, and that's the one connected with the clinic. There's just so much.
And I think, I hate to keep bringing you back to this, but I just keep thinking, why is it that our government seems obsessed and fixated. I feel for the people in Ukraine. I feel for the people in Yemen. I feel for the people, people were killed in Israel. I feel for people in Afghanistan. We left that country in ruins. There's a lot of people suffering all over the world. In an ideal utopia, we could save them all. But it just seems to me our government system seems way more focused and set up to help people in other countries rather than our country. And the truth is, our federal government prints money. I hate to tell you, folks.
Oh, yeah.
It's not our taxpayer dollars paying for Afghanistan, Iraq. They're printing the money. In Afghanistan, in particular, it came out, the Washington Post reported the generals were ordered to spend $300 million a day. $300 million a day. There's not enough U.S. taxpayer money to cover that for a 20-year war. So they're printing money, and then they say we're borrowing it. Modern monetary theory. I won't get into it. But the bottom line is, I mean, for the amount that Norfolk Southern reimbursed you a hotel, they could have just
paid off my house.
Paid off your house.
Got me into a home with the same amount of payments.
Or the government could do it.
Yep.
The government should be ordering the corporations
no
to do
interest
it.
That's what
rate.
Superfund does.
We should all
Superfund
want.
could be taking us out, buying us
That's
out,
what we need.
and then
declaring this a Superfund.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and then they go back and sue Norfolk for the money back. That way, but they don't. I heard they don't want to do Superfund because they can't run a railroad through an abandoned town. It is a historic town, which is a difference from the other two communities that I'm most familiar with. Okay, so let Norfolk buy us out. Then they can use them as Airbnbs. Because I heard, I don't know if it's true, heard they wanted to build a hotel for all the people they're going to be bringing in. Buy the homes, use them as Airbnbs. Then the people who they bring in can live the actual small town rural life. Don't make sense?
No. They don't want to run a railroad through a Superfund? Then reroute the fucking railroad.
And it is already rerouted. This is like a dip down, so you got a straight line, and then we're a U in this. So they could have actually ran trains this whole time.
And I think that's an important element. Again, I don't want to be a conspiracist, but this is a fact. You could check me on this. Norfolk Southern, J.D. Vance said, sure seems like this company poisoned this town to open up the rail track sooner. Well,
they did.
That was a key route for them, and this route, there was weapons being manufactured. I always pronounce it wrong. Is it Lima or Lima?
North Lima.
Lima, Ohio.
Yeah.
They were manufacturing, I believe it was planes, or some type of weapons that were going to Ukraine. I'm not saying that was the reason they did this, but there was military weaponry.
Oh, they need to get the train off the tracks so that they could run those weapons.
There was military weaponry being shipped on that route.
And what about the nuclear scientist and the spectrolite radioactive Superfund in Madison that the train went through? There was one day they mentioned in the list of agencies responding, a nuclear scientist was thrown into the mix. They just rattled, and then we started talking to somebody else from out of the area that lives near Madison who has knowledge of how these things work, and they were very concerned because there is a Dow spectrolite radioactive Superfund there, and they do not trust that maybe there was more on there than we thought. Hair falling off. People who had their hair fall off. That doesn't make... there's a few things that don't fit in... I don't know. It doesn't seem like mass radioactive poisoning, but with everything else, we've got nothing real cut and dry and point blank.
You mentioned getting specialists in here. It's not just getting specialists in here. They need to get blood. They need to get testing everyone's blood. They need to be testing everyone's urine. Not once, but probably on
frequently.
A monthly basis.
They need to get a biopsy of our livers. Any kind of test they're willing to do. Aaron did say there's an invasive surgery. You can get a piece of your jawbone out to test for Chrome-6. I know people would be willing to. I mean, if they pay for the surgery and the recovery, take care of me, I'll take a piece of that bone out.
It just seems to me, based on all the other money we're sending everywhere else, this is a drop in the bucket.
Yeah.
It's a drop in the bucket. But to me, the reason they won't do this, I won't even say to me, this is the reason they won't do this. They do it for you, they're setting the precedent to do it for everyone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I've said from the beginning. And that whether it's the government or whether it's Norfolk, that's why they... But you know what? The government's already done it. They've already done it with Love Canal and Times Beach. They've already done the healthcare with Libby, Montana, 9/11.
But that was the government. And see, they're using the CERCLA on this one. Why the hell did they bring CERCLA out? That is the biggest thing, because they didn't want to knock down this town. So if it wouldn't have been under a CERCLA, would this town be leveled?
Explain what you mean by CERCLA.
So the EPA, the government, whatever, coming in and doing what they did at all these other places.
I just ask a simple question. What is the point of having federal agencies if they are essentially there to stand with their, excuse my French, dicks in their mouth and just watch as the corporations...
They're there to make us think that the government cares. That's the only reason they're there. They're there to manipulate the system to their advantage and make us think it's in our benefit.
Yep.
And I think, because I see wingers who say, oh, look at all the blue cities, you know, and the crime and this and that. This is a bipartisan thing. It's not like if there was a Democrat governor, this would be a lot better.
It's just people.
The people in Flint, for example, were very excited when Governor Gretchen Whitmer got elected. Oh, finally, we're getting rid of the Republican who covered this whole thing up, and a Democrat's coming in, and we'll get some help.
Yeah.
They haven't gotten shit from Democrat Gretchen Whitmer. This is a Republican governor. Hate to say it. If it was a Democrat governor, I don't really think there would be much of a difference.
I think it's just trying to pin the blame.
I think the only thing that would make a difference is if whether it's the new governor or a new president, if they want to really stick it to their predecessor, that's the only reason they're going to do what's right for us.
Right. Before I wrap up, I want to ask you guys, I mean, as best as I can, I'm not 60 Minutes, I don't have millions watching, but, you know, what is it that you need from everyone else? Because I think, unfortunately, in this country, and we have an information overload. There's a gazillion podcasts, there's a gazillion YouTube channels, everybody's running around, you know, 1 job, 2 jobs, 3 jobs, kids. It's hard to remember yesterday, much less something that happened a year ago. That's why I keep coming back to places. Flint, you know, I'll be here more. What do you want people to know? Because to me, I think this is very similar to other instances in that this is not like a recovery. This is still a disaster. It's just being spun.
Framed.
It's being spun as a recovery. So what is it that you need from, you know, the rest of America, your government, the media? What's your top asks here?
We need someone to write the judge. The judge that's going to be looking at this case. There is a reason why this is expedited. Like, this is coming up real quick. We hear everyone else, 10 years, they're finally settling on something. Melissa May from Flint, Michigan, they're finally almost done with what they were doing. But it's been a year and a half. Why are they doing it so quick?
It's not even the end of the time to sign up for a lawsuit.
Yeah.
We still have until next February to sign a lawsuit.
So is what I'm getting, you guys think that Norfolk Southern settled so quickly so that they could get it lower, knowing that there might be some way worse information
I think it's going to get worse, because we saw health effects that became a lot worse a lot quicker. And after I testified in Pennsylvania and I read my statement, I went through all the symptoms, and me and Krista went through all of them. We had 95 symptoms that were coming up over and over and over again. It wasn't like, okay, this is one time it's happened. No, this had to come up a handful of times before it went on the list. People had to tell the doctors for this, or I have this, or people showed me their medical stuff. Yep. This was coming up a lot, and I put it out there. I read each symptom individually. So there is something going on for them to push this so quickly. There are people passing away. There's people having seizures. There are so many issues. And there's going to be a time where they're not going to be able to stop everyone from testing. They're not going to be able to stop everyone from getting this medical help, because people are getting tired of it. We need an extension. They need to push this out further until we get more information. It's not even about the money for me, because look where I'm at now. I mean, it doesn't really matter. We're going to struggle. Our
communities deserve very large settlements. They said you should be able to go out and live your best life, because you don't know how long you have. You don't know how long you're going to be there for your kid, or God forbid, you don't know how long your kid's going to be there. And I've heard that from multiple people on both sides of the political aisle, on both extremes of the political aisle from across the country. What I want everybody to know is this could happen to you. So it's so easy to pass a news story and think, wow, that's a shame. I'm glad that don't ever happen to me. On February 2nd, none of us would have imagined this. I had been in my home 27 and a half years at that point. Only home my family had ever known. She's been in her home almost 9 years. Yeah. You know, we had lives that were set up to live within our means. We were content in our community. We had things that we valued that enriched our lives. We had people that we were connected to, whether they're blood family or friend family. And a lot of that's been ripped away from us. A lot of families are on different sides of this, and they're not speaking. A lot of friend families are struggling. And it's really a shame. And there's a lot of relationships that are really struggling. You know, we've heard of several breakups, whether it's a marriage broken up or a long-term dating situation, you know, and we're trying to fight to keep everybody together, to encourage. But if you think it can't happen to you, nobody heard of us February 2nd.
Right.
We were invisible. And we wish we could be invisible again.
So, right, our judges, I don't know how much further it's going to go with writing.
East Palestine off the rails if you scroll through, there is a post with the information for the judge on the class action. Mm-hmm. Write your representatives and tell them what you would want if you were in this situation. Write our representatives, J.D. Vance and Sherrod Brown. I mean, if you have the 10, 20 minutes, write one email, copy and paste it to every one of them. You know, this could be your life, and I'm like, no, I don't want to. It can happen to your community. This or something similar, and we never thought it would, and we don't want you guys to suffer what we're suffering, so help us get through it so we can help make things better in the future.
Yeah. We would love to get back to normal. We would love to have a house. We'd love to be comfortable again. We'd love to have what we had before, but it's going to happen again. We need it stopped.
There's been multiple custody issues. I've talked to so many moms that their custody agreement meant that they had to, or said that they had to keep their kids in East Palestine.
Yeah.
And the mom moved the kids a half an hour, 45 minutes away to protect them. And then children who changed custody. It's just so deep. And it's our health. We don't know.
And that's one other thing that, like, okay, let's say we do go relocate. See, we bought our homes at smart times. 3.9, 4.9 interest rate. Now, everything is almost at an 8% interest rate.
Correct.
So this is why we're living in a camper. Because if we were to go buy a home, we'd be paying through the roof.
We'd go into debt.
Right.
Yeah. We wouldn't be able to survive.
Like,
into overwhelming
it's
debt.
just to keep the family safe.
Plus your medical bills.
Yeah, and that's the only...
And he's putting that off. He shouldn't. Yesterday he had blood. I mean, you should not put that off.
I tried to get him to go to ER. And I understand why he didn't. But I did try to get him to go. I called Dr. Gollum today to see if she had any words of advice. But we don't know how this is going to affect him or her or me or Zane or my grandson or, you know, any of the people that... What about the people who don't think anything's wrong? I'm worried that they're going to have, minor symptoms and not go to the doctor, which right now isn't the end of the world because they're not telling us much. But as it develops, I'm afraid they're going to miss early detection.
But also, you need certain kind of doctors for certain kind of things. So just going to the regular guy around the block that you go to for a cold isn't going to cut it for...
Now, there are a couple of... I've heard a couple of people say, my doctor's been documenting, my doctor's been looking into some stuff. And then we do have some of the study doctors, like Dr. Gollum today. It wasn't part of us. We need a toxicologist that comes to town, every 2 weeks. Whether he reviews the last week's notes, we need our
every 2 weeks. You need a toxicologist to open up a storefront.
Unfortunately, unless Norfolk's
they probably wouldn't be able to stay there. They'd be like, no, we're getting sick, and they're out like everyone else.
Remember when the CDC folks came here, they got sick and left.
Oh, wait, here is another thing. Yeah, when we were at the hotel,
my jelly beans.
We got jelly beans all over the place. When we were staying at the hotel, they were switching their workers out week after week.
CDC.
No, just anyone that would come in.
Norfolk.
I even asked someone, I was like, are you here for East Palestine? They're like, no, we're towing cars. I was like, better make sure you had your medical done before you came here, because if you get sick, You can't prove it.
They would be there for a week. New person would come in. The railroad was hiring new people, sending them in, and they were switching them out because then one of the same guys came back, and I was like, how you doing? I was like, I haven't seen you in a while. He was like, yeah. He was like, I'm back here working again, and stuff like that. So they were swapping people,
and they're
so
always
they would
young.
only keep people there for a short period of time, swap the people out.
Interesting.
They do have a free clinic in town where he gets symptoms. That's not a useful one. That's the same one that's saying, oh, I don't think it's related, when you have a medical timeline to give them. But, if he's having this severe of a symptom, do you want to take the chance
but
to go back?
What is the free clinic doing?
Nothing. They're dismissing you. They're sending you to specialists who are not aware of what's happening and what the dangers are. And then when you ask them about it, well, I don't know that what you're talking about is related. When you can give them a timeline.
Yep, and a journal. And my eye does the same thing her eye does. Last 3 times I went.
But when you're out of town, your symptoms seem to go
gone.
away.
So then I go into town to deal with this, and then my eye gets worse when I leave. So that's not helping anything.
Right. Well, you might see me around here more often, so thank you.
It'd be nice, and we appreciate you
Bring
guys.
a camper next time. You can camp beside us.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. And a few public service announcements before we go. Obviously, you know the drill. Do you see anyone else doing this kind of work? I do not. You do not see CNN out here. You do not see MSNBC. They are covering Trump's trial all day long, 24/7. They are not covering people being poisoned. Frankly, there's other outlets with way more resources than us. They don't. They told you. They are not allowed to cover it. They're the executives, the executive producers. They don't want to spend the money to cover the chemical nuking of America. I mean, that's what this is. These people, their town was nuked unnecessarily, and now they're dealing with the consequences. And frankly, in many cases, are going to be dying in silence if we don't speak up and we don't get attention on it. So, as best as you can, obviously YouTube and others don't like to elevate this kind of content. A lot of people don't see these streams, so if you could share it, that would be very helpful. If you could post it on your own social media, that would be even more helpful. All you got to say is, over a year later, people are getting sicker and sicker here. This is not a recovery. This is still a disaster, and it's being swept under the rug. If you could support Status Coup, you could support us for 16 cents a day. 16 cents a day equals $5 a month. So all you got to do is think 16 cents a day. If you don't have 16 cents a day, okay. I mean, some people don't. So if you don't have $5 a month, that's fine. If you do, subscribe, statuscoup.com/join. We do not have funding from Norfolk Southern or ExxonMobil or the remaining Koch brother or Democratic Party. We don't have funding from anyone but you, and it's very tough. We drove. We did not fly here. We're driving. We drove, what did we drive, 6 hours today? We drove 6 hours today, and after this we're going, not tonight, but tomorrow we're going to Flint to cover the ongoing decade anniversary. This is a year and 2 months. A decade anniversary of the Flint water crisis that is ongoing. No offense to my Flint people out there. I don't go there because it's a great vacation town. I go there because somebody has to keep this in the news. Somebody has to keep attention on the fact that literally we have sacrifice zones around this country. Whether it's the government poisoning you, whether it's the corporations. I mean, what's the difference? The governments and the corporations are one and the same. It's sad, but it's true. And I'm 2 back surgeries in, and I did not fall. It is from the driving, it is from the flying, it is from the wear and tear, and a lot of other reasons. So if you can support us, you could become a member, statuscoup.com/join. If you're already a member, you could donate any amount. That's statuscoup.com/donate. A lot of times on these trips, you could ask John, I'm fucking anxious like a 16-year-old waiting for prom because we're spending all the spending all this money and we don't have donations come. Amazing person drops like $1,000. This doesn't happen every time, but sometimes. Or you'll get, a couple $100, $200, this and that. If that's not you and you can't do that, totally fine. If it is, we are not staying at the Ritz-Carlton. We're staying at the Best Western. And we don't spend your money frivolously. It's on, food, hotels, flights. We didn't fly this time. And another thing, we are premiering our documentary for the 10-year anniversary of the Flint water crisis. It's called Flint Fatigue, and we just set it up to premiere it in Flint on Thursday. So if you're in Flint Thursday night, I posted it on my Twitter. We'll do an email also, but we are premiering it at 8 o'clock Thursday night. Feature-length documentary called Flint Fatigue, being premiered Sunday online for everybody. It'll be on Breaking Point's channel and our website, flintfatigue.com, where you could donate there. It was not cheap to make this documentary either. But if you can't do anything financially, the one thing you can do, share these videos, post it on your streams. I mean, I still believe in word of mouth. Tell your neighbors what's going on. I talk to people that, there's a fire at a plastics plant near them, and people in the community are having symptoms. Almost like within an hour, whatever agency says, oh, no health problems. People are having health problems 6 months later, a year later. There's spills in a river. People are having health problems. People in West Virginia, we just left West Virginia, literally one of the poorest communities in this country, in coal country. Sure, you could say, well, they deserve it because they voted for Trump. It doesn't matter who you voted for. They're Americans. They are going to the doctor. Stomach, diarrhea, vomiting, nausea, headaches. Some people have mysteriously died suddenly from the water. They don't even have a local newspaper there. Nobody has covered it but us. We went to West Virginia. No offense. It's not my vacation town either. Although it is beautiful, West Virginia, and I really enjoyed the... So, I could go on forever. But the truth is, we need you. So if you can support us, StatusCoup.com, StatusCoup.com/join, StatusCoup.com/donate. We're going to do a couple more interviews in East Palestine, then we're going to Flint. Make sure you're signed up for our Substack so you get updates. That's StatusCoup.substack.com, StatusCoup.substack.com, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thank you.
We appreciate everybody's donation, bringing them to us.
Don't forget to say the bell icons. That way these people don't get the shadow ban.
Oh.